Hello everybody. Welcome back to 444 Keys to Wisdom. Um so this is kind of like a part 2 to the last video I did. Someone actually located me on Instagram. And I haven't been on Instagram in a while. But I noticed this message that was there, and so long story short, I'm going to tell a little bit more of a story that I rarely talk about. So this young lady asked me, she says she's not doing the best financially. And she was thinking about letting her sons, she has 4 sons, go with their father. But she's afraid of what happened to me might happen to her, and she wanted them to go temporarily. So she was like, how did you even end up in that situation, if I can ask? Blase skip. So I'm just saying this so it can, maybe it'll help somebody. I always believe that, when we go through things in life, a lot of times we don't go through them for us. We may have to go through things for other people, because the same thing that you were able to pull yourself out of, or the Creator pulls you out of, you may have to be a living witness to somebody else later to show them, I went through what you went through, and I'm a living witness that you're going to be okay. And here's how I made it out. Okay. So for me, it was a little bit different when I spoke about losing custody of my 2 children. Now, they're adults now. They're in their 20s, very respectable young men. They're doing well. They were raised very well. The first part of their life through me, the second part of their life through their father. So they were raised very well. Just the circumstances was, it was kind of traumatic. So how it wasn't that I had a CPS case or nothing like that, because that's what the young lady was asking. So this actually happened about 4 or 5 years after I divorced him, and we got married very young. We were just too young. We partied a lot. He partied a lot. He was a drinker, and he was the youngest in a family of nothing but sisters. And so he came from a family where they pretty much dictated everything he did. He had a hard time standing up for himself and standing up for us as an individual family within the immediate family. So I just, once we got a little bit older, we kind of grew apart. I just, it was just time. So I did file for divorce. And then we also got into some things in our marriage where, later on he kind of put all of it on me, but he participated in as well. But that's another story, but that's fine. Because I knew that was going to happen. Like, we got into some things while we were married. We got into some wild stuff. But I knew that he would say, oh, she did this, she did that. He wouldn't say we did this and we did that. But what I am a firm believer is the truth will always prevail. The truth will always present itself. Sometimes you have to really, really patient. You have to just wait on it. But the truth always prevails, no matter what. What's in the dark always comes to the light. So I just took that on the chin. I was like, okay, so this person's going to lie on me. I already know, but I was ready for it. So anyway, but what happened was my sons would, after our divorce, they would spend their summers with their father. And this one particular summer, I worked for a nonprofit organization with the youth, and I got laid off. And so it took me a very long time to find another job. And I did find another job at a group home for teens. But by the time I found another job, I was already getting evicted. And so I tried to apply for like eviction help, and it was just a big mess. So long story short, I ended up going to another city, and I stayed at a homeless shelter for women and children because I had a daughter. Like I said, it has been 4 or 5 years since my divorce, but I had a daughter. She was about 2 or 3 around this time. And I also was already dating someone else when she was 2. So I had to leave the city that I was in, and I moved to another city because I had stayed at the homeless shelter. I went to a relative's house first, but I couldn't stay there long because that particular relative lived in public housing. And so, you know, you can't have people living with you in public housing. You know, that's not on your lease. So my daughter and I went to a homeless shelter. We stayed there for 6 months. But when I got to the shelter, I called my ex-husband. I said, hey, listen, you know, I lost my place. When you bring the boys back, bring them here instead of there. You know, this is what happened. He was like, well, why didn't you tell me? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, cuz, you know, just like always, I got it. You know, you didn't need to know that. So he said, well, why don't you just let me keep them till you get things settled again? And I'm just like, are you sure? You've never had them full time. Like, even when we were married. I tell people all the time, there's a such thing as a married single mother. Just because you're married don't mean you got help, okay? He partied a lot. He worked a lot. It was me and my kids a lot at home alone. So other than when I started partying to try to keep up with him, you know what I'm saying? But I was like, are you sure? You ain't never had them full time by yourself. Now, are you sure you can handle this? He like, yeah, you know. So I sent him his child support card so he can get his own money back. I sent him their birth certificate, social security card. And I was like, okay, well, as soon as they get settled. At first we talked about them permanently. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. He's like, just, you know, when things get settled, then they can come back home. So I was like, okay. So I ended up staying in the shelter for like 6 months before I got my public housing. And like I said, this was years ago. Even today, when I pull up to my house, I still can't believe that I'm a homeowner. Like, wow. But, so I got a nice little townhouse and public housing in the city that I was in. And I, you know, I had enough rooms for everybody. And I, you know, let him know, like, you know, I moved, blah, blah, blah. And then it was just like, well, no, I don't want to bring them back. They've been here for 6 months. They done started school. They done made friends. So all of a sudden, he's reneging on the deal. And I'm like, what? You know what I'm saying? I remember being really upset. And by this time, I had found that I was pregnant again by the newer person I was with that I mentioned earlier that I was with when my daughter was 2. He actually followed me to the new city and tried to find him a place too. So, you know, I went to hair school trying to find something to do with myself now that I wasn't doing any youth work anymore. The city that I was in didn't really have a lot of jobs like that. So I said, well, I'm going to go to school to do hair. That's something I've always wanted to do. I never did it. So let me just do that. I went to college for a couple years instead. So let me just go back to the hair thing. So I remember calling my mother and, you know, I was like, oh, he don't want to get the kids back. I was crying. I was so upset. And she was like, well, you're the custodial parent. He can't just take those kids, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, well, he's talking about he's not bringing them back home, blase skip. So she was like, don't worry about it. You know, don't get upset. We're going to work it out. So skip forward. I remember having a conversation with her and she says, well, you know, I rented a car on this day. We're going to go down there and get the kids, blah, blah, blah. You know, we're not talking to them no more. I don't know what's going on. Because it was just really weird. Like, before this, our divorce was very amicable. There was no reason for me not to trust him. Like, I didn't know. Like, you know, he was on his BS just like I was on my BS. We was young. We was in our 20s. You know what I'm saying? But I never thought he would do something like this. Be this treacherous. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, is he trying to get me back for some stuff? Like, what is this all about? You know? And he had remarried. And I'm like, is it the wife doing this? Like, why was she doesn't even have children? You know what I'm saying? At this time, she didn't have any kids. And I'm like, why would you try to take another woman's children from her when you don't have kids? You understand what kind of karma you putting on yourself? Like, what if you're going to have kids one day? How you're not even a mother, so you don't know what this feels like. Like, how dare you? Don't you want to be a mother? Like, why would you put that kind of karma on yourself? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so my mother died the next day, y'all. After that conversation that she said, I rented a car, we're going to do this, I'm going to go to church tomorrow, and then, you know, this the day we're going to leave. I took off work, and I was like, okay. She's like, we ain't talking to nobody, we just going to go. I was like, okay. So the next day, I'm getting a phone call from my hometown. They won't tell me what's wrong. They just keep telling me to come back, come home. I'm like, okay. So I'm driving. I just felt like something was wrong. And I get back to my home city and they tell me my mother is gone. She's passed on. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just talked to her yesterday. We supposed to be going to get my kids. What are you talking about? So that was something. Trauma on top of trauma, y'all, you know. So I went to, you know, let them know about their, because my kids are my mother's only grandkids. And so I couldn't even go get my sons from my mother's funeral. Like him and his family hid them in another state so that I couldn't find them, because I guess he was afraid if I got them back in my grasp, because, you know, I'm their custodial parent, he can't, you know, take them. So they never got to go to her funeral. It was just a lot going on. And then, so we got homelessness, custody issue. My mother passes away suddenly, and she was pretty young, like 49, heart conditions. And then I had a new baby. And so a month after I had my new child, I get a call from, and we were going through court proceedings while I was pregnant. I went to all of them. I remember my ex-husband only showed up to one. I don't know how they had that set up. I remember seeing some papers that said the reason was because I was in an unstable environment or something like that. Someone actually walked into the church of my mother's funeral and served me papers at the funeral. You know, I was like, damn, what did I do to these people? Like, this is some cruel shit. But anyway, so, and y'all listen, collective, up until maybe a few years ago, I always thought that unstable meant because I was homeless. I thought that was the reason all these years. No. I started figuring out, like, what they was trying to say, I was mentally unstable or something like that. I was like, what the hell? Oh, they got me. That situation was my lesson. All help ain't good help. Be careful who you trust. But anyway, but at the time I was going through, I had never been homeless before. I had to go to a new city. I got like, it was a lot going on anyway. So, but mentally unstable, no, check my records. I ain't got no mental health issues in my record nowhere. Like, is that what they meant? All this time I thought the unstable meant that I didn't have a home. No, these people tried to say I was mentally I said, oh, I didn't figure that out till maybe a few years ago, and this has been over 10 years ago. Whatever. So I'm sure they can visibly see, like, there was never nothing wrong with her. She was just going through a lot. And you know what, collective, I guarantee you, people, when they put you through things like that, if they ever went through that, they couldn't handle it. They would not be able to handle it with the grace that you had to handle it in. So anyway, long story short, so a month after my new child is born, I get a call from my attorney that they gave him custody. So that's how that happened. You know, they spent a whole year there. They told me they established friendships. They didn't want to move him again. And then they're in a 2-family income house, and I'm in the projects, you know what I'm saying, on welfare with 2 kids. So it made more sense to let them stay where they were. So that's how that happened. So the person that inboxed me wanted to know, like, well, how was that possible? You had to have done something. Are you sure? And she's like, well, what if I do this? You think they're going to, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I didn't know that was going to happen to me. You have to use your intuition. Only thing I would have did differently is I wouldn't let them go. But I ain't going to say that because it worked itself out. But I would have had things done in writing. At the time, I just didn't know. I've never been through anything like this. I didn't know how to cover myself. You know, on the legal side, it was just a verbal agreement that nobody else could prove. So, and I end up having to pay child support. They gave me a year to pay child support. You know, like I said, and there were times where, you know, she was like, you know, kudos to you for paying your child support because some of these men, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I did. And I ended up getting like $400 something back from child support because I was overpaid. But there were times where I wasn't working. I finished hair school. You know, I had a new baby, had to find another job. So there were times where I got hit hard. I remember doing the sales job I worked for Humana in a call center, and we did commission. And because I had gotten behind on my child support, sometime before I found that job, my first commission check was $2,000. It was a little over $2,000, and I wanted to use that money to get my sons for Christmas, but child support took it. They took every dime, and I couldn't see my sons. So, you know, men that go through that, I understand because I've lived it. I get it, you know. So when they took that $2,000 from me, I just, vowed to not ever get behind, and I worked hard to stay up on my obligation or whatever. Even though it wasn't fair, it didn't matter what's fair. This is what's on, this is what it is, but, if this is helping someone, that book, Wild at Heart by John Eldridge, and it wasn't, I can't even completely say it was religion, because that situation actually helped me see religion, helped me expand myself beyond religion, and that kind of started my spiritual journey. So that situation, having my children taken from me was kind of like one of those situations where something that was meant to destroy you turned out for your good. So something that was meant for my bad actually worked out for my good, because I wouldn't be who I am today had I not experienced all those things. Did I suffer from some depression after that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because nobody supported me. My family didn't give a fuck that I was going through that. Like, nobody cared. I lost my children and I lost my mother all within 6 months, Nobody gave a damn. I went through that completely, with the power of the Most High, who I see much bigger than what religion gives the Most High credit for. But it's like, yes, it hurt. I lost some years of my son's life that I'll never get back, but it made me into something that I never thought I could. It pulled something out of me that I didn't know existed within me. So, do I have some regrets that I missed a lot, and that I was able to be duped like that? I trusted the wrong people and they got me. I wasn't able to defend myself, but it later pulled the voice out of me that I now have. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know how to fight something like that. But now I can help others. So, Wild at Heart, John Eldridge, that helped me let go and say, okay, you never thought this would happen. I never thought I'd have to spend any day away from my children like this, because I didn't do anything wrong. You know what I'm saying? But if I do, here's a good reason. Because again, even though that was some fuck shit, him and his family, this coven decided to get together to do. What I knew him before that, what I knew of him as a person, he was a man. He knew a lot about masculinity. He tried to do the right thing. So the fact that I'm not a man, and no matter what I went through in life, I cannot teach my sons how to be a man. Like, they can only get what I wanted them to become from him. Even though I was being done wrong, even though I was being lied on, I was being betrayed, my kids were being stolen from me, money was being, like, I still had to stay within my heart. But at the end of the day, first of all, they're going through enough, so let go. But I know what I want them to ultimately become, and they're going to have to get that from him, not me, because I'm a woman. You know what I'm saying? And then too, financially, I was in such a bad spot, even though I knew we would have been okay. It's just, ultimately, I just wanted them to be successful men in society. And regardless of what was going on around us, I knew that they needed their father for that. Regardless of what their father was doing to me and us and all that, at the end of the day, none of that part will matter. The bigger picture is these children have to grow up around someone. And like I said, I got them through the baby stage, the toddler stage, the nurturing stage, when they really need their mother. But now they were getting ready to go into preteen ages, and they needed a man around. They needed a father, So that was what let me go, what helped me let go and surrender, even though it was unfair, if that makes any sense. So, to that young lady that asked that question, please find John Eldridge, Wild at Heart. Look at the stages that every man has to go through to truly process and become the best man that he can be. And when you read those stages, women, we're not built for that. We cannot do that. And if I got any women watching me and you're keeping your sons away from their father, please don't do that. Please don't. I mean, unless he's dangerous, you know what I'm saying? If he's dangerous and he on some up, that's a different story. But if it's just a matter of, he with her and I don't, let that go. Let that go. Let that go, because we're not men. There's certain things that, boys, they need from their father. That's the only thing that kept my sanity through that, is just let them be where they are, because again, he's going to be able to teach them manhood in a way that you don't have, because you're not a man. The rest of this stuff, we're going to just fight through it, deal with it. You know, I was able to find way. I learned how to heal myself, heal my daughter, because my daughter, you know, her brothers were the love of her life, and she went through a lot not having them around, and she's okay now. But this is the example of when you turn your pain into power. This is the example of when you learn to alchemize pain, because that was a painful situation. I still know for a fact I have a hole in my heart that will never be repaired, because I missed some years that I can never get back. But then, like I said, there was something else. Something was ripped from me, but something else was given to me that nobody understands. It is absolutely amazing. And I would not have been given this wisdom and this kind of power had that not happened. Okay? So you can turn your pain into power if you allow it. You're not a victim. You know, I spent a couple years feeling like that. And I realized, I looked around, I'm like, my family don't give a fuck. Nobody cares. You're not a victim. You're going to have to save yourself. You're going to have to pull yourself out of this. You know what I'm saying? That's the part where religion takes us in the wrong direction, where we waiting on Jesus to do something. But if you're a true believer, you know, if you're a believer in a higher power, not necessarily Jesus, because I don't fool with that Jesus stuff, but a higher power, you know that you've already been given all the tools that you need. You just have to use them. There's nothing that we're waiting for. Okay, you have to, it's in here. You have to pull it out of yourself. And that's what I did. And it set me off on a journey which I never thought I would be at. And today, being a successful woman, a homeowner, you know, being able to send my other child out of the country, being able to travel out of the country myself, being able to help so many women and children, you know, my grief counseling work, it's a beautiful thing to be able to help set people free from where I used to be, and to hear situations, even fathers, even men, you know, to encourage them on that child support, because it is hard. I get it. But you gotta do the right thing. And even outside of the child support, I would send my sons money, you know. I still do when I can. It's just, had I not had that sort of pain, like I literally, y'all, I feel like I died. But what I was resurrected into, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So to that young lady, you know, if their father is a respectable man, absolutely. Let him raise his sons. And if he's financially capable, absolutely. But do all your legal paperwork in writing, and sit down and have a conversation, and just make sure you're on the same page. But do everything in writing to cover yourself. But if it's more beneficial to let them remain, just make sure you can do what you have to do so you can still be a part of your son's life. Don't let him take them out of your life, you know, but that's something you just have to, you know, I don't know him, so you have to play that by ear. But my thing is just back yourself up with things in writing, and take things to get notarized. So you have your legal written documentation is the best thing I can say for that young lady that asked that question. But as a woman, you don't have everything that they need to become respectable men in this society. You know, they need to be around a man. They need to be raised by their father. You know, especially, I want to say she said they were older, like preteen ages. So you've done a lot. You know, the moms, we're the nurturers, we're the lovers. We hold them, we rock them, we tend them when they're sick, you know. But when they get to that age, that's when they really, really need their fathers. Okay. So I'm going to leave that right there with y'all. I hope that helps somebody. I hope that inspires somebody. And y'all take care. Like the video, share, what have you. Bye. Till next time.